And let's go to one of my favorite guys in the world. And I pestered him to get a hand in here before the World Series. Moderator extraordinaire, Michael G. All right, so you got a hand for us here. And where's this one played out of?
It's played out of Parks. So
Parks 2-5.
We're playing 2-5-10.
2-5-10.
We're playing with the straddle most of the game.
Okay. 1K buy-in, right? 1K max. Right?
1K buy-in. I'm the effective stack with 1,200.
Okay. Yep.
I've been playing for about 5 hours or so. Splashy Kid opens. He has a $2,500 stack. He opens middle position at 30. Button called. I'm in the big blind. As I said, I have $1,200 with the ace of spades, king of spades. I make it 125.
Hero in big blind with ace of spades, king of spades, and you 3-bet to 125?
That's correct.
Okay, so call. You go 3x plus the call, right?
Correct.
3x plus the call. A little bit small. Everybody's 1,200. A little bit small from out of position.
Yeah, that's what I realized after.
It's not like insane. It's not like going 70 or something like that. I just try to get as much value. Now, with that being said, though, I know I always give you shit, Mike, but sometimes when you're a little bit of an older player, and I'm not talking about Mike being older, but just in general, if you have a nittier image, you do have to do some things that don't necessarily scare people away. And I do think Mike probably has an image of having the goods a lot. Like, Mike, if you opened your game up and bluffed more, I think you'd probably win a lot of hands at non-showdown.
I find 1 or 2 spots a session for that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you 3-bet to 125 from the big blind with ace king of spades. Okay.
And the Splashy Kid called, and we were heads up.
So MP calls.
Yep.
Button folds. Is this Splashy Kid a regular or?
I haven't seen him before.
Okay. So no tournament series or anything going in town.
Well, they have it's funny you say that. They have a tournament every Friday, and I had gotten to the room because I don't work Fridays. So I got to the room at like 4:00, and we were playing since, and he was there when I got there. So he could have very well busted out of the tournament because they have a daily Friday there.
But this guy doesn't know who you are.
No idea. He has no clue who I am.
Well, I think that probably is going to work to your advantage here. Okay.
So there's 280 in the pot.
Mm-hmm.
Flop comes King of Hearts, 6 of Hearts, 3 of Clubs.
And you're heads up.
We're heads up.
Okay.
And I don't think there's much to do. I lead out for 125. I did the same size bet. I didn't want to go too big. I also didn't want to go small.
Well,
so I went to 125.
This is a little bit in between here. So what is this like? What is this like 40%? Something like that?
About that, yeah. A little bit more than 30.
Okay. I mean, it's one of these ones where it's like, you definitely could have bluffs here. I was just trying to think about if you were trying to set this one up where you were trying to get the kid to like kind of float or make a play because he doesn't know you would size way down, but it still probably accomplishes that. I mean, if he looks at you like an older guy and he's like, oh, okay, well, this guy's always going to bet like at least 200 if he has a king. So 125 is kind of small. I mean, you could probably even size down, even more, but Splashy Kid, king high board. Okay. So you go 125. Yep.
He called. Now the turn is the 3 of spades. Pairs the board.
So the pot now is 530.
530.
3 of spades. So
that's correct.
King of hearts, 6 of hearts, 3 of clubs, 3 of spades, front door heart draw. Possible someone could have 3x of hearts. That would most likely only be ace 3 of hearts, right? Shouldn't really be a call pre-flop with a button behind, but you're saying he's splashy. Okay. Yep.
So I checked.
Interesting. Okay, so this is where we're going to get to this spot. So you check here. Now, so you're trying to make it look like you don't have a king, I'm assuming here?
That is correct.
So you're trying to make it look like you don't have a king as opposed to just continuing to bet here.
Correct.
So you're probably trying to possibly like induce a bluff, which is kind of interesting as I know that we're going to flow through here because I've got a lot of thoughts on this one. One of the things that's different here because you're heads up is there is absolutely an opportunity for this kid to call you when he doesn't have a king, just because he's heads up with you. if you were three ways, let's say somehow the other guy had called, or even four ways, or something like that, in a 3-bet pot, or even in a single raise pot, and you see bet this board, and next to act called you with like two people behind you, it's an extreme example, like in a 3-bet pot, he should be almost always king X heavy or have a heart draw. And if you had a hand like aces, which unblocks top pair, similar to kind of like the last call I was talking about with Nate, you could sometimes go for a check raise for value on turn because king X is going to be betting off a lot. Here, this guy doesn't have to have just a king or a heart draw to call you, but I can get on board with what you're thinking about. Like if you just lead out here, he's just going to fold all his bluffs. I want to give him the opportunity to bluff. So that's interesting. But I guess my question is that if he does bet turn, how do you play it if you think he might possibly be bluffing? So you check, hero checks, okay.
And then he bet basically the same amount. He bet 175.
So MP bets 175 into 530?
Into 530.
So if you call, the pot will be 880, and you guys will have about 800 left. So I mean, here's my thought about this. The problem here, if you were up against a kid that was like had been really, really shown to be somewhat loose and maniacal, you can make a case here for check calling the turn and checking the river. Not something that it's not something that I strongly recommend a lot. Just playing it as a pure bluff catcher, you think that he's going to try to move you off of something. Like you're playing it like you had jacks or queens or something like that, right? The problem that I have, though, is that a lot of times when you call the bet on the turn, somebody might just give up at the end, or they check back like king, queen, king, jack. So I preach a lot of times at this level that usually taking the line and just worrying about value and trying to get max value from a hand that you think is best usually overrides taking a line and trying to induce a bluff. Now, as you move up in stakes, you definitely need to be more concerned about balance and doing things to have some strong hands to call across rivers with in certain situations. But here, my fear is if you just call, what are you going to do on the river? Because if you check, it might just get checked back. Or similar, because obviously there's a couple options here, right? Similar to what we talked about in the last hand, could you call the bet here and then on a non-heart river just like bet 600 at the end? That's option one. That's the upfront bet option. Or option two is, do you just click it up to like 375 here?
I clicked it up to 400, but close.
Okay. So
I went to 400.
The only thing that I would say about this, and I think everybody will agree, is this is so seldom a bluff when you take this type of sizing. Like you're the pre-flop 3-better. You c-bet the flop, and now you take 175 and you check raise to 400. This is so seldom a bluff that really king, queen, and king, jack shouldn't actually have that much trouble folding. However, that's not the reality of it. The reason why Mike is doing that is because he thinks he's going to get called and it's the best way to get the most money in, right?
Right.
It's just very, very hard to balance this with any type of bluff in a given spot. But hey, like I said, it's live poker. Obviously, this is an unknown and it still might get the most amount of money. Did you ever consider calling and then leading river?
I did not, no.
You never did?
I did not.
You know the upfront bet thing I'm talking about, right?
No, I do know. I checked with the intention because he was doing that a lot where he was stabbing a lot or doing things like that's why I was calling him a splashy player.
But do you see what I'm saying though, Mike?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely could have played it that way.
Well, I'm not even talking about the upfront bet. When I was saying about not necessarily a lot, it's just a weird little thing because I think you were checking the turn because you think he might have some floats. And now, so if you were to run logically with that, you could say, if I wanted to play it like he was bluffing, I'm going to check call and check the river. And that makes sense. But the problem is that people don't value bet enough when they have a king and they don't bluff enough either. So it's just a weird little spot, which is why I say I take this overriding line of actually just going for value. You go to 400, okay?
And he took a long time and he called.
All right. So MP calls. So what is his range now when he calls your check raise?
So here they are. He could have ace of hearts, jack of hearts.
So you're saying a flush draw. He could have a flush.
Yes. Could have a flush draw. He could have queens. I doubt he has queens because he would have four bet preflop. Yeah. So
No. How about him calling your check raise on the turn? I don't think he's got queens.
yeah. I doubt he has ace king. So I think it's either pairs or a king.
What?
And it's what king could he have?
What do you mean pairs or a king?
He could have pairs, pair tens, pair jacks, pair nines.
Mike, come on. Are those hands going to call a check raise on the turn? Are those hands going to even bet the turn when check to? And then call a check raise?
No, probably not. I'm trying to fit into what.
How about we just bucket it very, very simply as his range is king X or a heart draw?
Yeah. All right. King X or a heart draw.
I mean, doesn't that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely does. It does.
So the pot's 1330 and you have put in 400 on the turn, 525, 650. You've got like what, 550 left, right? 550 left in your stack, is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly what I've left.
That's why actually on the turn, I might even go a little bit smaller, like 370. I mean, you can still get all the money in 400, whatever. It's fine. Or like 350 or something like that. All right. So 1330. Okay.
And now the jack of diamonds rolls off on the river and I have a decision.
Yeah, but you only have
550 left.
You're going to have to shove here. And if he's got king jack, he's got king jack. I mean,
Exactly.
here's the thing. Well, here's the thing. Like, and people are like, check. He'll bluff a heart draw. That's never going to happen. If he has a heart draw and Mike checks, I just, if my opponent, I'm going to give you the times where checking the river after check raising the turn would be the play. If my opponent would value bet king queen here after calling a check raise, and I checked the jack and he value bet all in with king queen, and he also bluffed with hearts, then the play would be to check. But that is not what we can live node lock him as. I think if he gets here with king X, he is going to call because you've built the pot up. And he's not going to bluff if you check with busted hearts. And obviously you're not going to get a call. So you just have to go for it here. And I just don't think with you having like 550 here, he's going to get like almost 4-1. I just don't think a king is going to fold. Which again is why when I talked about the hand with Nate, it's slightly more powerful to do this unblocking top pair. Like if you were to have aces or something like that.
So I thought about it and I thought, you know what? He has one hand that beats me. If he has it, good for him. I jammed. And he turned around and goes, you either coolered me or I bad beat you.
What? Wait a minute.
He said you either coolered me or I bad beat you.
Well, that's not a good sign. I mean, I don't know if that means that he's got king jack here.
He had king jack. He turned over king of clubs, jack of clubs.
King of clubs, jack of clubs. So MP has king jack.
Which is the only combination he could have when you think about it, because he had the backdoor club draw, and then I guess he got stubborn on the turn.
What do you mean? What do you mean it's the only combination? What if he had king jack of diamonds? You just bet the flop, right? And he called, right?
Correct.
Oh, he can't have king jack of diamonds, jack of diamonds. The suit doesn't matter though, because it's not like he did anything. You bet and he called. He's going to call with
Right.
any king X on the flop. So whether that's king jack offsuit or, well, you can't have king jack of spades because you have ace king of spades. There's no diamond. Actually, king jack of clubs is the only combo of king jack suited that's available.
Correct.
Now that the jack of diamonds comes on the river and you have the king of spades in your hand. Okay, I got it. Yeah, that sucks. I mean, I think a more interesting river here actually is a queen. Still, the thing is you build the pot up so nicely. I don't think there's anything you can do about jam. But if you can imagine a situation where you had more like half a pot size bet, or say you had like 1,000 left on the river, Mike. Okay. The queen at the end, I think, is harder. And the reason why the queen at the end is harder, even if he continues on the turn with king jack at the same frequency with king queen, is because if a queen comes at the end King Jack. So let's say the river, I'm just going to change it so everybody sees it, right, to the Queen of Diamonds. And we can imagine us being deeper. If he has King Jack now on King 6, 3, 3 Queen, he no longer beats any king. He chops with any king except for Ace King, and he loses to King Queen, which some people think about, right? And obviously you lose to King Queen. But when a Jack is on the river, you still might get the call from King Queen. So because the Queen plays, when in actuality, when you really look at it, it probably doesn't matter. But I'm saying from a live sort of poker perspective, I think you're actually far likelier to get a call from King Queen on King 6, 3, 3 Jack than you are from King Jack on King 6, 3, 3 Queen, if you were deeper. So
that makes sense.
Take that for what. But I don't think you did anything wrong. I don't think you did anything wrong, Mike.
Well, I was going to ask you about the turn. Do you, I mean, I just think the turn is just, I can't see shoving there, check shoving. I think that's so horrible.
What about just continuing to bet instead of check?
Yeah, that should have been the play too.
I mean, it doesn't really. I mean, it's going to, say you, so instead of you check raising to 400, say you bet like 300.
75.
Well, say you bet 300 and he called, right? Now you're still, see, the thing about that is that, and that's kind of interesting, right? Like you took the chance of hoping that he would bet off on the turn and getting a check raise in and getting called. And you were left on the turn with 330. But if you just came out and bet 300, right? And he called, the pot would be 1130. Yeah, it would be 200 less, but you still would, you still would only have like 700. You could still set up a shove. So I actually think the play, the more and more I look at this with your stack size, is really to bet like 325 on the turn.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because you don't have to have all this shit happen for everything to go your way. And the bet size is almost the same as getting a call from a check raise, right? Now, say you did that, you went 325, he called. Again, the pot would be like what, 150 less, maybe it would be like 1200, and you guys would have 600, maybe like what, 350, 600. You'd have like 600 left. You still have to jam. I mean, what are you going to do in the end,
I realized that. I mean, it was just one of those things where it's just poker. There's nothing you could do.
Now, the one caveat, the one little difference that I will say is that if you go lead, flop, and turn, on the river, if it's a brick, we talked about most of the time we're just going to jam, but if the river is a brick, sometimes, if you check the river, if it's like a deuce on the river or like an 8, and again, I'm not advocating you do this. Sometimes, though, you might get a guy to bluff hearts if you go bet, check, sometimes. Whereas with your bet check raise, I don't think you're ever getting a guy to bluff hearts.
No, you're right.
No, I'm just saying. So if you have a situation where a guy might value bet king queen at the end on the river's a deuce, or if he might bluff hearts, it's occasionally a play that you can make. Again, I'm not a huge fan of really doing that at this level, just because people just don't bluff enough and they don't value bet enough. But Mike, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for being a sport.